morning, everyone, and I mean morning. It's very early. Some of us
Certainly.
would normally be sleeping if it wasn't for this. But anyway, she's Sarah Albadwi. I'm Andy Sterling, and welcome to Talking Horses. We have 11:40 first post with 10 race cards. A little chilly out. It's interesting. I was talking about it with you how people don't know there's some fire at
Jersey.
Prospect Park in Brooklyn, and I can smell it in my apartment in the Upper West Side, but it's blowing west, so it doesn't seem to have affected us out here, but obviously affect people there and hope that everybody's okay. That's unusual.
Yeah, you didn't leave your stove on.
No, my stove's electric. Anyway, we got 10 races to talk about, a lot to talk about. We'll head over to Naira Bets, and we'll get on with the card in just a moment. Use the promo code BONUS200. We'll match the $200 of your initial deposit. We have a carryover, $34,660 in the pick six today. Good luck in that sequence. Of course, starts in race number 5 of our 10 race card today. We have a $10,000 hit and split on the late pick 5 here and or at Woodbine. Get more information over at Naira Bets. It's the late pick 5. Got to opt in for that. You want to get involved in that with Naira Bets. What else do we have? We have track stats as well. Check them out when you're at Naira Bets. I'm going to opt in for the... I'm going to opt in right now for the hit and split. That's how easy it was. That's how easy, and I'm pretty incompetent. What else do we have? That's it. That's all. There's no show today, by the way. So you can catch all the action on the Naira Bets. We will be back on tomorrow, but there's a few days this month where we're not on occasion. I will be doing prattles between almost all of the races during the day. Race number 1, unless you have some idea you think the 5 is suddenly going to sprout wings, it's really about first-time stars in the race, and you've gone to the one outside, Tux.
Yeah, this one going out for Bill Mott. There is that dam side precocity with this one that I like to see, as the dam won all but one of her starts, and her lone loss was going a route of ground in the 2019 Acorn. So she has that dirt sprint ability. The second dam won first time out, and I just like that this one has plenty of works and plenty of foundation, having moved to Saratoga following the close of the meet to work there and stay with that string of horses that Bill Mott keeps up there for training when it's still open after the meet. So I just like this one in terms of having that precocity on the dam side, and it's sort of a grab bag with horses in this race outside of that, because there are things that are going for some of these first-time starters, but it's not like anybody really jumps out.
It's interesting, and I'd actually like to ask Leanna, who's the assistant to Bill Mott, just curious, because Leanna had this horse during Saratoga down here, and obviously they felt the horse wasn't really ready to run. But then to ship it up to where Bill is up in Saratoga, it is odd. I mean, it's funny. As soon as Saratoga ended, they shipped this horse up. Maybe they just felt they weren't really close to racing, and they wanted to keep horses in the stable that were ready, but they're ready now. And I'm not going to knock a first-time starter in here. I think Salamis, the 4, will probably be the one that takes the most money. What strikes me interesting about Salamis is it's such a turf pedigree with Antono, and she's produced Augusta as well, that it's kind of interesting that she's on the dirt. So it's probably counterintuitive, and I haven't asked Chad Brown, but you'd imagine he probably thinks this is a dirt horse to run here, given that pedigree.
Yeah, I mean, he's very familiar with the family, so clearly he sees something that suggests that this horse could handle going first time out on this surface and sprinting as well. You would think that knowing the family so intimately that he would be able to spot that this one could handle this surface. But I looked at stats for him with first-time starters, dirt sprints, 2-year-olds at Aqueduct, and Colts only 1 for 15 past 5 years.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I imagine the horse will probably be live. The 3.5 to El Capi, who ran that huge race here, Cigar Mile Day, and has bombed twice in 2 subsequent starts, one here and one down in Maryland. I took a small shot with the 2 Peak Performer, and I may be just completely off base on this. The Dam, it's funny, and the Dam, some people may remember, she was a really exciting prospect that was 3 for her first 4, running buyers in the high 80s, and I think she last ran like the Devoted Dale or something, and she disappeared from the planet. And David Argona pointed something interesting to me about this horse. That dam was actually purchased at auction, which is unusual for the Phippses. And the discussion with him was, I said to him, the reason I find this horse could be interesting is the Phippses have been selling the vast majority of their colts. The ones that they've stayed in for the most part, and there have been a few exceptions, but for the most part, have been ones they've stayed in for a piece. They've sold, and they bought into a couple horses with, I think, Vinny Viola, maybe Mike Rapoli, and they've had some runners. But in general, they've been selling the colts and keeping the fillies. And this is a colt they kept. And my thought was, and it's not, there's no science to any of this stuff. the fact that they kept this horse means somebody must have liked this horse. So I thought there might be some reasons to be optimistic about him, and maybe the fact that he's a colt that they kept. It's really just a bit of a thought. We'll see if it works out. Race number 2. Interesting race in race number 2. And let's start the conversation with Illuminaire. I'll tell you something that gives me a little bit cause for pause. All of those heavy favorites that Todd Pletcher ran in the first 4 races, he ran 3 of them. And it's not that they ran terribly, but they all underperformed. And this is a barn, if you go back to the beginning of 2024, is 18% with an ROI of around $1.43 with all their starters. And these are not Todd Pletcher numbers. I've been watching Todd's stats for a long, long time. And if anything, he has been one of the most consistent trainers with like a 24 to 25% win percentage and an ROI of around $1.75 to 80. So he's being the takeout, which is not an easy thing to do, especially for an operation like that. And it's just been such a significant drop off. And you could say some of it, and fairly, is he can't rule Gulfstream the way he did because they don't run that many dirt races. And his sort of edge there is kind of gone, and I imagine that had a big thing. But still, I'm seeing a lot of horses disappointing, and I just don't feel a sense of overall trust that they can come back and run their races, because obviously this is a horse that's pretty good. And that field he was in last time was pretty good as well.
It was. Here's what I worry about with him. When he was able to be forwardly placed and really secure the lead, he was successful going the 7 furlongs, and then he's trying to battle with Valentine Candy last time out in a race where the race was won and the horse who finished second both came from off the pace, and I think that was a respectable field. Isn't Mariachi a little bit quicker than him?
Well, he's never been clear. He's always been involved in paces, and he's in a good stalking spot, so I'm not sure I really see that logic. I mean, I think last time he got caught up with a very fast horse in Valentine's Candy. And Valentine's Candy, who had run 102 Beyer before that, ran an 87 Beyer in this race, and then came back and ran a 99 Beyer. So that would suggest that Illuminaire was badly compromised and rates to run a better figure here. So I don't worry about that, because you look at all his races, he's actually never had the lead until sort of the later stages and stalking outside. And we'll take a look at Mariachi while we talk about him. But at the very least, he has to deal with horses like Mariachi and perhaps Gunnet, though. I'm just beginning to think that Gunnet's just... He's just a shell.
I think we got what we wanted from him last time, and he ran into a very good horse. Yeah, but at the same time,
but he could be forward, and this horse could be sitting third. And I think the question more to ask, I'd say, and obviously Mariachi can win, but to finish Luminaire is he going to be comfortable sitting third, or is he a horse that really needs to be engaged in the pace? Yeah. And if he's engaged, does it mean the pace is too hot?
And does it mean that the pace is going to be a little bit hotter now, going from the 6 furlongs to the 7 furlongs? And I think the 7 might be a little bit beyond the wheelhouse of Valentine Candy.
Oh, the last race being 7. No, that's a very, very fair point with him. As far as Mariachi, I don't have a big problem. He got in good form. I don't love the fact that he was in good form and now he's been gone for 2.5 months. So that's a little bit of a concern. I don't know if there's been a dearth of races to run in, but it just seems a little odd. It always scares me when horses get good and then they miss like at least a race. You've taken the closer Alpine Thunder coming in from out of town.
Yeah, I feel like he is going to get the jump on Awesome Native, and that was really it for me, that he was going to be able to sit off of horses like Mariachi, Illuminaire, and possibly Gunnet. He was going to get started ahead of Awesome Native, and he might just be one that his lone bad race as of late was against my buddy B, who I severely underestimated going into that Bold Ruler, and who that was his first time running off of Lasix since 2020. He can be a little bit more tactical and a little bit more forward in some of his races, and he has more consistent, faster races than a horse like Reddington, who has that outlier number last time out. So
show his last
with
race.
him, I'm looking at overall form that's comparable, and I think he just sits the trip.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue. I thought his last race was good. This is Reddington, and obviously Eddie Barker's barn is on Fuego, and this was a tremendous improvement for him. The problem with that is, boy, he's got to run every bit as good
as
in this race he did last time, and maybe even better, and he's got to do it at 6 furlongs.
And that race was so much faster than anything we'd really seen from him recently.
Right, and to be honest with you, I don't really think I don't want Gunite. Not that he doesn't have races or competitive. Gunnet, whatever, right? Gunnet.
I might want Gunite in this race.
I don't know. Probably now he's probably fat like me. it's a competitive race because the forwardly placed horses can win, and and I don't think Reddington was without a chance. But it's also like 36-1 last time, 3-4-1 today. It's just like you missed the boat.
Yep.
And as far as Awesome Native, it's nice to see Abby Adsit back. I don't think Abby's saddled a horse for over 5 years. But for those that remember, she did fine when she was training, and she got this horse from TT, and then it actually had left TT's barn before the last race. He actually ran pretty well in June 8th. That was a day you wanted to be forward. That was a fast race, and I just thought he's the kind of horse that has pretty consistent form, and I've always kind of liked him, and he's got a good outside post, and there should be some speed.
Yeah.
So I put him on top.
Yeah.
But one thing I'd say about the one, and his last race was legitimately good, this trainer has had a lot of success out of town. He hasn't run that many horses here. The only horse he's had in the last year or so, or last really 5 years, I think he hasn't been training that long, or a lead trainer, is a first-time trainer switch on a sort of lower-level maiden claimer, I think. And a lot of his runners have kind of underperformed here, but I'm not going to be shocked if he's...
Yeah, I wanted to put Awesome Native on top. I just didn't like that we've only seen him once this year.
No,
but I think
agree.
He was badly compromised last time.
That's fair. We haven't seen him now for 5 months, almost exactly 5 months. So race number 3, we'll take a look at Spring Magic and a bunch of these others. I'll tell you what my problem with Spring Magic is and that race. Starry Midnight finishing 3rd. And I mean, listen, I've got a long storied career with Starry Midnight, mostly involving betting her when she lost. A couple of times I think I cashed, maybe once. But I just wonder if this was a super, super hungry field. Not that today's race is exactly sated.
Full of winners, yeah.
Right.
Look, everybody except for 3 horses comes out of this race, and I think that with Spring Magic, she was able to control on the front end. I think that a couple of horses had some intention to have some forward position in that race, but as you said, with Starry Midnight, maybe she is looking at that race alone, the one that had to check a little bit and make up that ground, but looking at her races overall, I mean, I just wanted somebody who did not come out of that race.
Yeah, and I'll say something else. Wayne Potts has been on a big run. His numbers over the last month in New York, he's winning about 10%. Not quite as hot as he once was. You have gone to Irish Jackson on top.
Yeah, this horse is tough to trust. I think that some of her races have been vastly aided by where she was on the racetrack. And I think that overall she does have to overcome the little bit of time off that she's had. But
off avoided claim, too, for whatever that's. I mean, that to me is a little meaningful.
I will say with her, though, First Class Cat was a horse that has improved over her last 3 starts since then, running races that are faster than that one that she ran in. Try it again. Not a consistent type, not a trustworthy type, but she did have that one win 2 starts later against some tougher company, at least on paper. I just wanted somebody else who was not coming out of that race and who at least had run well against some better horses with the racetrack or not.
She's got nothing but races that make her extremely competitive here in all likelihood. Bell, I think Street Jam might be kind of the logical one if you're going there, but you look at her. Linda claims this horse for 62.5.
For almost a year.
Then she's off for almost a year, running for 35. She didn't run terribly last time. She wasn't really bet. She didn't run that well, and then she's claimed by Rudy, and now she's in for a quarter. So she has a big odor. I mean, obviously you and I both feel she can win. And with Bella the Ball, I know she didn't run particularly well last time, but that was a weird race where she's a little edgy, looked like a stakes horse all of a sudden out of nowhere. And they ran so fast, and I feel like it was coming off a little bit of a freshening. She's got back races fast enough. And if she could get to her good races, and I kind of look at her last race, a race she never had a fair chance in. She's a big price.
Well, and you look at who she's been facing as of late. She didn't really have a fair chance in those races either.
No, obviously not against Nick Style and Cupid.
Yeah.
And Cupid's Heart.
Yeah.
I just think she's been facing better horses.
She has.
But she was logical of the alternatives. There's not really a lot of meat on the bone in this race.
Yeah, we just wanted others that were not in that race.
Race number 4 is a preposterous race. And I'm glad it's not in the pick 6 because I feel like for pick 6 players, you're doomed to spending too much money. I feel like this is the kind of race that in an odd way would keep the handle down in the pick 6. Because I think people would feel like I got to use 5 horses and have absolutely no trust that I'm using the right 5 because it's very hard. I mean, look at the PPs of the 2 horses that you and I have picked. And we obviously saw the race differently, though I don't have any, I'm not going to say I had great ideas in here. I mean, I bet a horse
and if you do, good luck.
Didn't lift a hoof on the turf, taking no money. It was a better field, and I look at the pedigree, and maybe it's a little more dirt tilted. I'm just kind of hoping this is like a new face here, and I think it's the exact same thought that you probably had with When You're Strange.
Yeah, a horse that actually did take some money first time out and went off as the third choice in that race. And I know that Flavian Pratt was off. The horse finished dead last, but at least that was a day where I think that you wanted to be forward and be inside. And this was the one race on the card where a horse did make up some ground,
on the rail.
But on the rail, and the horse was 7-5.
It was
and
such
the
a
horses
bad
that
race.
finished first and second in that race were short prices, and this one I just thought maybe could take a step forward, stretching out in distance, and now going out for the second time, and just less chances to lose than a horse that I can't take Dream on Care at 0 for 21 when I don't think she necessarily gets better with more distance.
But she's been in good form.
She
At the
has
very
been.
least, in her case, she has been in good form. You've got her higher than I do.
Yeah,
I'll tell you a couple things about When You're Strange. First of all, it's misspelled.
maybe that was purposeful.
It should be your. No, I don't think so, because it's, you know where the name comes from.
No, I don't.
Oh, it comes from the Doors song, People Are Strange.
Oh, okay.
Do you know that People Are Strange? You don't know the song People Are Strange from the Doors?
I know
When You're
who the
Strange,
Doors are.
You don't think?
I know some strange
Apparently, I was
people.
reading. I Googled this.
Okay.
First, I Googled it because I wanted to make sure that they didn't spell
Before
your,
you
but
correct
it's
them, you wanna
correctly
check.
right. But also, I was reading that When You're Strange, and I'm sure a lot of people home know the song. Very famous song, People Are Strange. Is that Jim Morrison apparently wrote the song from watching people getting in and out of the subways as he was walking back to his hotel
Okay.
from visiting Andy Warhol's factory. So in case anybody's
sure he ran
wondering
into a lot of strange
where people
people.
are strange and subsequently where you're strange comes from, even though they've misspelled the name. And
Okay.
as somebody who, anyone who spends time on Twitter and watch people write your when it's supposed to be
Yeah,
incorrect,
yeah, it's
you
frustrating.
become more sensitive to these things, more useful information. Listen, the 8 can win this race. The 7 can win this race.
The 9.
I wanted to make a case for the 9, but man,
Yeah,
is he
that last
stink.
race was just-
Let me ask you a question. I know the pace projector has the 2 in front of the 4, and I could see. Do you feel like there's some chance, and I know it seems ridiculous to try to get Focus Pocus, who might not be able to run at all anymore, to go a mile, but do you see a scenario where Joelle is really aggressive with this horse, and maybe she's just found a field that she gets in front of, and there's nobody to come catch her?
Yeah, I thought about her. She just seemed like the very clear other horse because she had those 2-year-old races that
She ain't that horse
were
anymore.
okay, but was she just one of those 2-year-olds that was precocious at the time and everybody else has sort of caught up and now she's gone through a couple of different barns and does she get better with more ground? I don't know.
Precocious relative to her current form? Because she certainly wasn't precocious.
Well,
she
relative
just
to the horses she
ran
was
better
facing
than
at
she
that
ran
time.
right. She was good early. I don't know, but I
Yeah.
do think there's a scenario where she wires this field because, she's the kind of horse you might look and after she wins say, well, she does have the best races of anybody, but there's a very
Yeah.
good chance.
There are 3 horses
gone.
that maybe I would be surprised by, but anybody else, not so much.
I'm not going to go out on a limb against anybody in this ridiculous field. Race number 5 is the Hill Prince, and we'll take a look at Deterministic to start it out. A horse you obviously don't like at all. I'm not sure we were going there. I think he's fine, though he got a very good ride and
Oh,
trip
I should
here.
have him in second. I sent in the wrong
Probably,
information.
probably better going even this distance as opposed to a mile and 3/8. But I'll say one thing about Deterministic. He's obviously a good horse. He's been a massive disappointment. This is a horse that looked like, the maiden win and then the Gotham win. He really felt like a legitimate Triple Crown type horse. He has not been effective in the dirt, though I will say one thing about him. Their disinterest in using any of his speed, I think, has been a detriment to him.
They were a little more forward last time.
They got a lot of encouragement. And I just don't think he can be forward in this race. And he can close and win, but I'm just a little tired of him.
Yeah, I hear you.
So
You've
what are your
liked it
picks
for a long
supposed
time.
to
So
be,
my
by the
pick
way?
should be 2, 3, 4, 7, and that's my error. I was looking at his last
fine.
race and thinking 5, so that's my mistake. But look, I'm just a little tired of him too, but I never liked him quite as much as you did, and I think that he was more forward last time, but it still didn't work out. He still had a horse in Carson's
He lost to a
Run.
better horse, though. I mean, Carson Run, he's gotten pretty good, and I think he'd be favored in here by
Yeah,
a lot.
I do too.
So
But there's also no Yo Daddy to run off in this race, and the pace is, I think, murky in here. And so I wanted a horse like Cugino, who they will go with if they have to.
well, I mean, I assume that Bartlett's going to be in front in this race.
if
I
he
mean,
takes to the turf.
No, he could be in front if he doesn't take the turf. Plenty of horses that don't like the turf go in front. He's got a lot of speed. How's he not in front in this race? It's not like he's going to get out there and go, ooh, I hate this turf. I have no speed anymore. There are a lot of horses that will run off, actually, on a turf course that don't like the turf, and they're sort of confused by it, and it causes them to run off. So I don't think it's going to mitigate his speed. I was looking at Cugino and the Audubon. Cugino, to me, is the unluckiest 3-year-old turf horse in the country. And I think there's a chance that he's every bit as good as just about anybody. I mean, he was victimized by ridiculous slow paces down at Gulfstream.
That poor Transylvania
He was
trip.
1,000 lengths the best in the Transylvania.
Yep.
With that crazy trip he got from the outside post and
Leach
rushing
just
up,
went
et
right
cetera,
off
et
the
cetera.
rail. Yep.
The American Turf, another race, he got caught a little bit out of position in that race where most of the running was done inside. Then he has that blowout win. And then last time, I'm not
Too
going to.
far, Kentucky Downs.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wide.
But having said that, and I think that's a discussion that's going to come up later in the card today as well, he didn't run well last time.
No.
But it is a little hard to hold it totally against him. I think if the good Kujina shows up, as do you apparently, he's going to beat this field.
Yeah, yeah. I think that at least I know with him they're willing to have some forward position versus deterministic where it's still sort of that question mark, even though they were a little bit more forward last time. And I think that he is just overall a little bit better than some of the last trips that he's been in. I think that if he didn't have that last race where he totally bombed at Kentucky Downs, he would be an overwhelming
It's
favorite.
only 3 to
coming
1 in that race, right? And he probably should be favored. But then again, the last race, Royal Majesty can win this race, and he was victimized by the fact that there was a crawling pace and got momentum's okay, and he wired the field. But he also came right up the rail the
Yep,
whole way,
he
and the
saved
rail
ground
was
the
the
whole
place
way.
to be. It bothers me. I think right to vote's a little more interesting than you do. I have no idea with Chad Brown, and maybe it's a case where there wasn't really a non-winners of one that he could find for him, or he had other horses for it, and he thought he might be a little better than that and take a shot in the stake. Because I'll say one
gave
thing
him a
about
look.
him. He improved from 2 to 3.
Vastly.
And I didn't bet him last time. Chad Brown had warned me. He said, I know you don't think this horse is good enough, but I'm telling you he's gotten a lot better. And he was right. He ran well last time.
He did. I thought that he had a nice trip, though, last
did.
time. He stalked. He was able to run right by, getting clear sailing. And I think that this is just a major class test for him. But that improvement is definitely there.
It's not like he's meeting any killers in here. No. And obviously he has to improve. But it's a rare Chad Brown horse that you can get a price on. We'll see what happens. The late pick 5, and that does start the pick 6, by the way, the carryover at $34,000 in the Hill Prince. And we'll take a quick break and be back with the late pick 5 in just a moment.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Welcome back to Talking Horses. Sarah Albadwi and Andy Serling. I was just, some of you may have noticed our flag is at half-mast, or you may notice it. And just reading that Pat McKenna, our Director of Communications, tweeted that apparently here and across the state, they're being flown at half-mast to honor Stephen C. Ebling, a New York State Thruway maintenance supervisor who was fatally injured while working in the town of Hanover on November 4th. So we know why they are, and of course, condolences to any of his family. But that's why the flag's at half-mast. Race number 6, I was a little late on Musical Maestro being scratched until he was scratched out of PPs. And the other thing about this race, and I don't know how early you look, but when I had PPs, Martinez, the apprentice, was listed to ride Omni King,
Yes.
which gave me some cause for pause. Dylan Davis, I believe, is now riding him and was listed in the later PPs. And can we switch the replays and show him first, since I started with him? I thought his last race was very, very good. He draws
I did too.
inside, and my only holdup with him was, A, I thought the one could wire the field, but B, I was a little worried about the apprentice with Dylan. I mean, I just think he's way the horse to beat here.
Well, and even looking at his turf races prior to this, and I thought this was a good effort as well from him, where he is dropping in for that tag at Laurel and going in the mile and an eighth, beating Jay Hirsch. If you look at his turf races prior to that, he had a trip at Gulfstream behind some good horses. He was going forward, and then he got run down by some good horses at Saratoga.
Well, wait a second, a trip at Gulfstream. Did you watch the race? Because we're relying on chart calls down at Gulfstream is like relying on the guy in Minnesota who predicts it's going to pour in Saratoga every day.
I don't think it was super significant, but I think that he did still have a little bit.
I mean,
It's
the
still better
chart
close.
comments at Gulfstream
No, I mean,
are
you
taking
can't rely
place in
on-
an alternate
yeah.
universe. You have to be
But
very
then I think
careful
I
with those.
picked him at a crazy price when he was running here in October, and I think that he almost did a little bit better than I expected him to do because he was forward in that race, finishing fourth. So overall, when he's run on the grass, he's faced better company, and when he hasn't, and he's been against company that makes sense for him, he's won.
He's a very logical horse in this race, and I think one of the reasons he's a logical horse is Funny Uncle. Funny Uncle will show the race there. This was the kind of
This was
performance
Flying P
that we're starting to make
highlight time.
people's heads swivel at the Flying P performances, because there was absolutely no pace in this race. If you look at the race, other than him, it was very close to a merry-go-round, and suddenly you see him at the eighth pole. He took off like somebody put a jet engine up his butt. I mean, seriously. And it's not like that race really existed before in his other turf race. He now hasn't been seen since. He was claimed by another outfit. He's back with Flying P now. He was entered once and scratched, and since in the last 2 months, so basically since Saratoga, I only look at the stats for Mike Maker. Flying P is 0 for 20 with 5 hitting the board. And listen, if he runs that last race, he's going to be very tough here. But
Sure.
how can you possibly trust that he's going to?
Right, exactly. That's the main question I have with him as well. And I think that you can't hold his first turf race against him since it was his first start in a sprint. But overall, it was a big move up, and it was a race that was so against the flow of the race last time that even if you think that he's going to repeat this race, well, you got almost 6-1 last time, and now everybody knows what kind of race he can run on the grass if you think he's going to replicate
I
it.
don't know how he was almost 6-1 last time. He could have been 20-1 basically in there. They were betting because Flying P horses were running, and they were right.
Yep.
But I am extremely dubious, but I've got him second.
And it's
because
not like there's a ton of confirmed pace in here.
doesn't matter to him. No, you're correct. Right. I mean, it looks like the 5's going to go, and probably Omni King sitting right there.
Yep.
Kick a Buck can win. I am not a big Kick a Buck. We obviously couldn't find anybody besides the same 4 horses. Not that surprising here.
Yeah, there's not a lot going on.
Kick a Buck's just who he is. I understand why you took Barnstorming. Go ahead, and I'll tell you why I don't like him as much as I
This
could.
horse has been unlucky on a multitude of occasions, but when you look at the post position that he has today, is it really going to make a difference? And I was not really in love with that last race. I know that the note says blocked and checked.
He
but
was. He had legit trouble in the
he
stretch.
did,
I
but
didn't
he's-
show it, but
he's had some trouble a couple of times, and I think the time to get him was when he had that disqualification. And
yeah, my friend Lee bet him that day. I was
Yeah,
up in
that-
the
that
box
was
behind
tough.
him, and
But-
he was crying.
look, what kind of trip is he really going to get today? He's posted towards the outside again. I
Right.
didn't want Mr. Tonic, who got that nice rail position in that last race.
Terrible field.
So then it's just-
The problem. Oh, I don't know what that.
I don't know
that's-
what's over there. But
Yeah, was that always over there?
no, that's new.
That's new. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
You're not seeing
what I was going
things.
to say is he had legit trouble last time, but it happened because the race was completely collapsing, and he was moving with the flow of the race. And even if he had won, or he wouldn't be in here if he'd won, but even if you're in second or third, you'd say with a clean trip, you'd say, well, he kind of sucked up, and now he's got an outside post. It doesn't hurt to get Jose Lozcano. I don't like you. I don't think he's impossible in here, but I feel like it's the kind of trouble that is mitigated by the
really
fact that it
trouble?
happened because of the nature of the way the race was collapsing.
Yeah, I was just looking for somebody that has some legitimate races and at least was going to be a better price than some of the others in here who I don't trust, like Funny Uncle, like Mr. Tonic, who had a great trip with a weak field, and then other horses that are just stepping up in class and don't necessarily do a lot for me, at least based on their last race. because
What about Frontman? I mean, I don't like him particularly.
hasn't he
'cause
just been kind of bad lately?
He has, but at least you'd say in his last race he was wide chasing a pace that kind of collapsed. I'm not making a big case for him because I feel like he's kind of fallen apart in his last 2 races. But
Yeah, what
there
happened
are
in the
times
race
he shows
two
up.
back? I mean,
I agree. That's why I didn't pick him. He was terrible too.
I don't know. I mean, you know I like this horse. I always want to try to make some sort of crazy case for him, but the time for him was earlier this year, and he's not moving in the right direction.
I just feel as though, horses like the 4 and 7, while they can win, they're not that exciting at shorter prices. And if our horse doesn't win, I think it could be a little bit more open. Race number 7. We'll take a look at Best Bet, who hasn't been seen since that wild performance off the claim from Gustavo Rodriguez, where he ran an 87 buyer. He's been gelded since then, and I think these races are being painted, by the way, probably for maybe next Thursday or something.
Maybe.
I don't know why they showed up there. Anyway, he's the speed. He's
Yeah.
got sorority prank. How in the world do you possibly trust this horse?
Right. That's exactly it. Because
Brad Cox give up. Where this, I don't know what to say.
and it was a muddy track last time, and I think that maybe he just ran a number that perhaps is a little bit higher than we expect to see from
Well,
him.
he's
yet
run
again.
those numbers before.
He
It's
has,
not like
but
he hasn't.
it's been a while.
Well,
So-
he had run it sporadically. It was just a Brad Cox give up that was hard to trust off his bad race.
and then also, where has he been since then?
I agree.
I don't like I like you don't like to see those big performances, and then we don't see them for quite some time, and now he's coming back in a spot that, yes, he is in the starter allowance, but he's so tough to trust in here, and he's not going to be able to free roll on the front end. Sorority Prank does have real speed. Not that I really trust him to
We'll
win,
take a look
but
at
he
his
can be
last
forward
race.
for sure.
He's got to be forward. He's always forward. Now, I don't think Irad's going to go on some kind of mission, but also I think it's worth at least entertaining the possibility that maybe the 2 just doesn't have anything anymore. And if that happens, then the 2 suddenly gets a much cozier trip. So, I mean, the 6 gets a much cozier
Yeah.
trip, because I don't think anyone's going to be surprised if the 2 doesn't break and he just doesn't
Sure.
really show up.
And then
suddenly this horse is dangerous.
Well, then, do you want to take Sorority Prank at a short price, who's 1 for 15, took a million years to break his maiden, but he did run well in this last start where he ended up finishing behind Treaty Obligation. So I think that he at least has run consistent enough races and shown that speed throughout his career most of the time. But do you really want him with Irad Ortiz Jr. up as what might end up being the third choice?
I don't know. I don't have a big problem with him at 4 to 1. I think he'd be a fine price. I don't
Right.
love the horse that you picked, who's the favorite. I'm not saying he can't win, but one thing to note for people: that DRF has fixed the running line. This is a non-winners of 1X $50,000 starter race, and if you look at the PP now, you see that little S before the non-winners of 1X. So Sorority Prank, some people might look and think, oh, he's moving from a non-winners of 1 to a starter. No, he's in the same condition last time. I think he was in a stronger running with 3 obligation in there, but he was in the same condition that he is in this race. Talk about Magnificent Mile, who has been running fast figs.
Yeah,
I can't argue
mean,
that.
looking at his last couple of races, I think that he had a nice trip too back when he was able to get the win. It was over some horses that are not exactly winning types, and neither is he, arguably. But I like that he was at least able to step up to a level like this and run well, finishing third behind Paxational, who had broken his maiden, then went on to win. And I think that he just ran a consistent type of race with what we've seen from him over those past couple of starts in this barn. And I thought that that field, in comparison to this one, as well as some of the fields that he had faced going back through Saratoga, arguably tougher than what he ends up running into here with horses that had more consistent form.
He's got figs that are higher than these horses. He's obviously a logical horse.
It is a quick
I don't
turnaround, though.
trust him to come back and run, but I've got him third, and I think to argue against him is sort of ridiculous, especially if you're trying to bet against the 2. And I don't really love Vinsanity. I know he got a good number, but I want to see that one again.
do
And that
too.
was a weak bunch that he beat, and now there's a 225
Third time
claimer
on
last
dirt.
time.
Yeah.
He's such a last time was the time horse. Liberté de Bayou is going to go one of 2 ways for me. This is a goofy horse that got loose last time, that's obviously not going to make the lead in this race, that was just the kind of horse you should have bet last time, and he just sucks, and he's not going to be good enough to beat these with a maiden 20. And that may very well be the case. But you know something? I think his race was close enough to competitive to a lot of these horses that he's the kind of horse in his first start that maybe he moves forward for Linda Rice. I was looking up a lot of numbers. I found an odd number for Linda Rice. It's off a maiden win in the dirt in a starter race. She's 8 for 28, 28% with a 236 ROI. So when she's won these maiden claimers and she's moved into starters as opposed to running for a tag, they've run pretty well. I realize this horse has to improve a little bit, but I don't know how much she has to improve, so I took a small shot with him.
Yeah, I don't blame you for taking a shot in here, because the shorter prices are just tough to trust. And I wanted to make a bigger case for Beaver State, but I thought he had a nice trip last time. I think that he overcame something in that start 2 back, where he ended up finishing behind a couple of horses that he was able to beat in that next start. And there was a huge Todd Pletcher favorite in there for Spendthrift. But
Oh, another Todd Pletcher favorite that underperformed.
oh no, this one did win.
Oh, really? Okay.
Although arguably you could say he still underperformed. It wasn't a
Okay.
very fast race.
See what happens. Race number 8, the Aqueduct Turf Sprint Championship. When are we going to change the names of these Belmont and Aqueduct Turf Sprints? Well, we can't call this the Aqueduct one once we move to Disco Partner. I think one of them could be Disco Partner.
Yeah.
I'm
Not
not
opposed.
gonna push anybody because I got the Harvey pack, but I like the idea of naming races for people and horses as opposed to Aqueduct if possible. So a lot going on here. Let's
Yes.
look at Senbei and Alagon, and Alagon gets a pretty significant rider change to Irad Ortiz. Not that he got a bad ride last time, but it just doesn't hurt to get Irad. I bet Senbei last time. I have a lot of love for Senbei, a horse that our friend Acacia named, and he's a cool horse, and I'm not against him, but I got 4-1 on him in a slightly easier spot last time, and I didn't want to take a short price on him, a much shorter price here.
Yeah, I hear you on that. This was a good pick by you this day. I tried to make the case for Alagon, but looking back and thinking, okay, he's getting this rider upgrade, and I agree with you that it is something that never hurts, but that wasn't a bad ride. He was able to sit right off of the horse that he arguably had to beat and nothing better. He was around. He didn't really have much of a kick, but he was involved, and he just got outclosed by a horse that was able to have that clear running room and might just be better than him. So at similar prices, I couldn't really make the decision to then say, okay, Alagon is a horse that I want to take on top instead.
Well, I mean, I think he's a player. We both got him second here. I just think
there's
he's a
lots of
logical
players.
horse in this race, and Senbei is probably a little bit better, but the rider change matters. It just matters. Now, this is a Bill Morey play here because this horse's turf race gives him absolutely no chance here.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
no,
he
he
beat
needs
a
to improve.
horrible field in his one turf race.
He needs to improve significantly with the time off. But again, when you look at the Bill Morey stats for certain circumstances like this, they do just stand out. Now, this one not quite as much as the one for Tour Jeté, but going from synthetic to turf sprints, he's 3 for 11, 27%, 49% in the money, $4.84 ROI, stakes alone, 1 for 3. And so I think that now that having this time off for this horse and having that improvement on the synthetic, maybe it's a situation where he did improve overall after that first race versus just having that turf race be something that he's likely to replicate in here, and he can be forward.
Yeah, I hear you. He improved so quickly on synthetic, though, that I wonder a little bit if he's a better synthetic horse. I've
It's
got him
possible.
fourth. I'm not letting Bill Morey beat me in races. If he can improve Tour Jeté 12 lengths off a claim, there's nothing the guy can't do. So I'm not going to let his horses beat me. But I'm wondering, and that becomes the problem with trainers like that you end up using horses, you just don't know they're good enough. And how big a price is he really going to be? Is he really going to be 8-1?
I don't know. This is a
wonder.
pretty competitive field.
Yeah, you may be right.
That I think anybody that's playing a serious pick six, they're going to use a couple in here.
Yeah, I think that Outlaw Kid is very dangerous near. We'll take a look at his win over Big Invasion with Son of a Birch third, and you look at where he went from there. Okay, they're off the turf. Then he wins a 5-furlong race up in Canada, and it's just a joke. I mean, those horses couldn't beat him. And last time out, I know the winner was a speed horse, but he's okay, that horse. And he made this sort of odd middle move in the race that probably sort of against the cadence of the way he runs. And I just feel like getting Flavien Prat in here, he makes an awful lot of sense. And he'll be a slightly better price than some other horses, so I put him on top. But I'm not against the 6. I'm not against the 9. I won't be shocked if the 10 wins. I think there's a bunch of horses that can win here. Even Son of a Birch is not impossible.
Yeah, 26 Black is in great form.
We'll show his
I
last
don't think
race.
he's impossible. I don't have him in my top 4, but I don't think that he is without a chance in this race.
I don't think he's without a chance, but he better get better because this is a big step forward. The best thing you can say for him is he's in great form. But so are a lot of horses in here, and they're better than he is because this is a real step up for him in beating Biz and Anaconda.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I would love for Thin White Dude to turn things around. I don't necessarily see it happening, but there are races certainly if you go back in time. And then even Jean Valjean has speed, implementation. We've seen how well Safi Joseph has done with his horses. That
If he runs his last race, he'll get beat 5 lengths. But right, Safi Joseph apparently can win with anybody. He was very lucky to win the Pebbles, but that horse was a non-contender on paper based on his last race. And the fact that she was even able to run remotely close to that makes you feel like you're supposed to use every Safi Joseph horse that runs, right? Seriously, because now she won the Pebbles because Jose Lezcano I don't know what the idea was to rate Makanga.
you got to let her go. And then
Makanga-
Johnny was like, well, I know this horse is crazy and she's going to fight.
Well,
I'll
it's
sit
not
right
that. It's once he rated her, she had no chance. And once he rated her, the pace was very slow. And because of that, you had a horse that was stalking a horse with no chance that almost wasn't a race, so suddenly she's controlling in a very slow pace.
And she's right
and
there.
that worked
Yep.
against oversubscribed. Obviously, if Makanga had been let go, maybe she would have won the race, but it would have been a very different race. But still, I still have no idea how that horse ran a 90 buyer to win that race, even with everything her own way. So I agree. Maybe
This
you're
is a
right.
tough
But
race.
I don't know. Implementation won that last race, to be honest with you. But the bettors knew. Well, actually, they didn't. And she's just going to have to improve so much to beat these. But you're right. Sappy Joseph, he just wins. Race number 9, the Red Smith. We'll start with Masterpiece, who won it last year. I thought you picked a 9 in this race.
I changed my mind because I was going to pick the 5, and then I was like, I don't want to pick the same horse as you. And then
I
was
picked
like,
the 5.
Yeah, I know. And then then I was like, let me pick someone else. I was like, no, I don't like that horse enough. So then I went back to it. But Masterpiece, I thought in this start had a great trip. There was real pace in here. We had Tie to the Sea and So High really dueling on the front end. And I didn't really envision this race having quite the same pace scenario where you do have 2 confirmed front runners that are actually drawing off and having that separation from the field like we saw in last year's Red Smith. So I think that there's an argument that he had been running some races in California that have proven to be very solid going forwards. Johannes running well in the Breeders' Cup, and that he maybe had to be a little bit more in the race than he generally prefers with those faster fractions. But I
don't know. He's sitting close to slow paces and running big figs. I don't agree with that assessment.
Okay.
I mean, and I also going to tell you, it was a better field that he was running in last year, unless you think that Integration is going to win this race. And if Integration runs his good race, he's going to win. We'll take a look at him second in Nation's Pride in the small field. The Arlington Million is a tough race to assess, but he's the other Kentucky Downs horse. And normally I'm ready to throw out Kentucky Downs races, but he got a great ride from Kendrick. He had a perfect trip last time, and he had absolutely nothing. And I really wonder if he's a distance challenged horse, and if a 1 3/8 is too far for his best race. If he runs his best race, he's going to win.
I think so as well, and he was the horse that we were hyping up around this time last year after he won the Hill Prince so impressively, and he's been a short price on multiple occasions. He clearly has ability, but when you look at overall what he's done since then, he's been running against tough horses, yes, but he's won once. And so I think that he is not a horse that's going to improve with more ground.
He's not, but he can run the same race. The question is he going to run well enough to run it? He's a pretty good horse.
He is.
I'm not way against him. I don't love his last race. Rebel Red will show his last race. So why did you pick him and why did you change?
I thought about whether or not he was a horse that would get better with more distance, and if he was also going to get enough pace in this race to.
He's extremely impressive in here.
He is. This was phenomenal. I also wonder if he's a horse that I have confidence in that he A, gets better with more distance, and B, runs this well off Lasix.
Well, that's fair, the Lasix comment. My issue is more that I think he's dressed up off this race. Well, you watch it and it's hard not to go, wow, this horse was close to last and just ran by the field in the 20 path. Having said that, this race completely and totally fell apart. The second place finisher ain't much worse at 14-1. The third place finisher was near 80-1. The other thing is you look up the pedigree. If you go into this horse's pedigree, he's a half to Without Parole. He's a half to Tamarcuz. These were milers.
Yep.
And I think Cherie is just trying to figure out what to do with him. She probably can't trust they're going to run turf race at Churchill to run him in whatever that turf race they have going longer. This is the last sort of chance,
Well, he
and
clearly
figures
has
she'll take a
ability,
shot.
but-
He was impressive. Why not? Maybe if he goes longer, it opens up a lot of different opportunities. And maybe he's not good enough. Maybe he's going to go longer. But I got a feeling, I think he was more interesting at first glance. So why limited liability?
I was feverishly scribbling away about him because he's just one of those Shug McGahee horses that has shown talent at every stage of his career. If you think about what he's done from 2, 3, 4, and now 5-year-old, he's shown that progressive development in stakes type of company and has run very consistently in the majority of his races.
But never as well as Masterpiece. I mean, Masterpiece has consistently been better than he has.
Well, there's no Masterpiece in here.
I'm sorry. The 8 horse, have you forgotten that he's in this race?
Sorry, I thought you said Master of the Seas. My
I
mistake.
said Masterpiece, and you said Masterpiece.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry.
I mean, that's my problem. Why did I pick him? I picked him because he'll be a bit of a price. I don't trust the 2. I'm not sure I want the 8 who's been back and forth across the country, and I don't think the 9 is good enough. So I I just went into him as just an alternative. I actually think Pioneering Spirit's going to run okay. The problem with limited liability is he's never really run well enough to win this race, and I'm not going to take his 102 fig at 2 miles and a 16th. I mean, if ever there was a fig Andy shouldn't have made, it was
I
probably
hear you
that
on that. I think his race 3 starts ago in that Belmont Gold Cup, I know that that was one of the 2-mile races, but I think that race was actually one of his more impressive efforts because he was in a tracking position, whereas the top 2 finishers in that race, one of them was way further back than he was, the Grey Wizard, and then Champagne Juan had made that blitzing move on the turn, whereas Limited Liability was closest to the front runners in that race and sort of stayed where he was that whole time. And then last time, they just went to the lead with him, and I don't think he's doing that today, and I don't necessarily want him to. But I think this year, over his last 3 starts, he's shown some improved tactability.
Well, maybe a little bit. I thought Eric actually gave him a good ride that day. I bet him in the Belmont Gold Cup, and he just wasn't, sadly, quite good enough. I'm going to try to hope he's optimistic getting Frankie. I'm just tired of the other ones. I gave Adamo a big look as he's a new gelding, but he has been, I mean, his performance in the United Nations was downright pathetic. Daunt never wins, but he's a big price if you like him. And I guess I just took him as an alternative. I think Pioneering Spirit is a little bit interesting moving to Rick's barn. Well, he ran very well last time. He's run well during the year with bad trips, and he has handled the distance. He's probably just a cut below these horses. At the end of the day, Masterpiece and Integration horses to beat. Take a small shot against race number 10.
And I think City Man, even coming off of short rest, I thought he ran well last time. This is much tougher.
He's not winning a mile and 3/8.
No, but I thought
it's his last start, so we can celebrate him for that. It's just his last chance to run. Christoph taking a shot with his last start, but he's been such a good horse. Yeah. Race number 10. Ain't much form in here.
No.
Go ahead.
No, this was a tough field. I mean, I went to the horse that at least has a little bit of early precocity with the pedigree. We know how good Bustin' Stones is as a sire of 2-year-old first-time starters. The Dam, she took some time to reach her best, but overall she did win 5 times and was very consistent in the money most of her starts.
And she was a router. She wasn't a sprinter.
She was, but multiple listed stakes winner, great stakes place routing on both dirt and turf. This horse is a half to 3 winners, the most accomplished on turf and marathons. But when you look at Bruce Levine with his 2-year-old first-time starters in dirt sprints, he's 6 for 21, 29%, 43% in the money, $5.32 ROI, maiden claiming 3 for 6. So I just wanted somebody that I could at least make a small case for because this is a hungry field.
I agree, and I've got her third because I respect Bruce, but she's coming from a terrible family. I mean, the production from this dam has been pretty atrocious. Now, having said that, maybe found the right field for it, but you say 3 winners. I mean, 5 of them couldn't outrun you and I in a horse suit, and a couple of them ran 60s. On the other hand, a 60 buyer would win here. Yeah. No, I get it. I've got her third. I get it. It's just a weird combination, but I respect the Roddy horses, and maybe it's a smokescreen riding Lane Leslie. Maybe it's the answer is they're friendly with Mike and they're giving him a chance on a horse, and Lane rides fine, but they usually, Kendrick and other people sort of ride their horses in these situations. So that kind of caught my attention, but I like the 10, Furry Fox, who in my opinion is just coming out of a better field, was wide the whole way around the track last time. I know it's kind of more of a turfy family, but the dam is also Bruce Boss making boss moves. Yeah. And it just seemed to me like this horse ran well enough against better horses that was a super logical horse. I don't want to ignore the 13 getting in here, a second-time star, though I don't love the race she's coming out of. I mean, there are a lot of horses coming out of bad races in this race.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think that I wanted to put the 10 on top of it. It just is a little bit of a red flag to me that they paid $100,000 for this horse. There is some pedigree, and now they're dropping right away.
They made a bad buy. They made a bad buy, and they're trying to win a race with a horse and run them where they can run. And I mean, I think if you're going to sit around and run them in maiden specials because you paid $100,000, that's a fool's errand. And I think that both Rick Dutrow and Lance and Robbins are smart enough to realize that this horse ain't never winning a maiden special weight. See what happens, Sarah. Thank you so much. Head over to Naira Bets if you're not a member of Naira Bets. Use the promo code BONUS200 and we will match for $200 of your initial deposit. We also have a carryover, $34,660. That'll start in race number 5. We have a $10,000 hit and split, the late pick 5 here and at Woodbine. Get the option, get all the info at nairabets.com and opt in over there. It takes about a split second. Check out track stats when you are there as well. And I think that's it. Is that correct? That's it. No show today, but we will be doing prattles between races. You can watch on Naira Bets as always. Sarah, thanks again. Chris Griffin coming up next with a reprise of the Scratches and Changes.
Almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.